But a very simple way to do this is to integrate this kind of self-check-in at your weekly business review. So I'm assuming folks are doing business planning and they're doing a weekly check-in on their business performance, their lead and lag indicators in their business. And so you can take a little 5 minutes to check in on your mental health lead and lag indicators as a part of that larger business planning process. And when you have your fingers on the pulse of your mental and emotional well-being, then you know small, doable things that you can shift.
Hey there, peeps. This is Michelle Nedelak. Thank you for listening to the show. I would love if you could give us your opinion on how you felt about the show, your experience that you have in regards to what we've been talking about. I am having an absolute blast, but your input is like dynamite on that explosion. So give us your input. We'd love to hear from you. Any questions, comments, concerns? Give us everything you got. We love it. Thanks. I hope you're having an awesome day.
Look into his eyes. They're the eyes of a man obsessed by
success.
Eyes that mock our sacred institutions. Bedroom eyes, they call them in a bygone day.
Sex desire is the most powerful of human desires. When driven by this desire, men develop keenness of imagination, courage, willpower, persistence, and creative ability unknown to them at other times. So strong and impelling is this desire for sexual contact that men freely run the risk of life and reputation to indulge in. When harnessed and redirected along other lines, this motivating force maintains all of its attributes of keenness of imagination, courage, etc., which may be used as powerful creative forces in literature, art, or in any other profession or calling, including, of course, the accumulation of riches. Napoleon Hill.
Welcome to the Little Blue Pill for Business podcast, where it's all about getting it up and keeping it up. And yes, we're talking about revenue and profit. We all know that it's about the 6 inches between your ears. So I interview some of the hottest people in the industry that are blowing and going so we can help you get on some action. So if you like a little tongue in cheek and not just physically, you're in the right place. Today, we are jumping in bed with my most amazing guest, Shulamit. Shulamit, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thanks, Michelle.
Awesome. So give everybody the highlight of who you are and what exciting projects you're working on.
I'm the entrepreneur's therapist. And so out of the work that I do, accompanying women business owners, riding the emotional roller coaster of running a business in an era of relentless stressors that could make you want to lose your shit on the daily, I am working on a book about women, entrepreneurship, and mental health, and how to integrate your mental and emotional well-being into your business in a way that is a resource, and in a way that you don't have to blow up your business and take 3 months and run away to Bali, which PS doesn't work anyway.
I love it. So let's back up the bus a little bit. How did you get into this as your specialty?
Well, when I went to school to get my master's degree later, I had wanted to all my life, and it took 3 tries to get there. The first 2 tries were with unsupportive spouses. Newsflash, that's what often happens to women. So the third time I succeeded, got my master's before I was 50, and came into the new career knowing full well that a woman in her 50s was not a great employment prospect because of the bias against older folks and older women in particular. So I knew that I was going to go into private practice, and it was a business, and it had to sustain me basically until I dropped dead, And so there's 2 psychologists in the US, Brad and Ted Klontz. Their research on money is very, very interesting. Folks might want to check them out, and I can give some references for you to put in the show notes. According to their research, they looked at a variety of professions and their scores on financial wellness. And of course, what's the profession that scores the lowest on financial wellness? No guesses? Mental health professionals.
Of course.
And I could go on forever about all the biases in the profession around money and earning money and marketing and selling and all that stuff. But I was aware of this, and I wanted a business that was a viable business. So I went into business coaching and training and masterminds, all that kind of stuff. And in the process of growing my own business and of hanging out with other entrepreneurs, because there were no other therapists hanging out with entrepreneurs, I really became aware of that emotional roller coaster. I experienced it for myself, and other people, other entrepreneurs would kind of like, because we're concerned, it's not a subject we talk about pretty vulnerably or transparently with other folks, because we're concerned as entrepreneurs that if we share our vulnerability, we might that might undermine folks' confidence in us and therefore undermine our business viability, right? But they would tell me, because I was a therapist. And at a certain point, you might remember the old commercials for Reese's peanut butter cups, where the peanut butter and the chocolate bar are going down an escalator at the mall, and one trips and falls into the other, and they go, hey, this is a really great combination. This actually tastes great. Well, the same thing happened with my business mind and my mental health mind. They collided and went, holy crap, there's a need for this. Business owners need someone to support them in their mental and emotional well-being. And that's how the Entrepreneur's Therapist was born.
Nice. I love it. That's awesome. So I'm thinking I want to talk a little bit about the therapist having the most stressful work, because one, I know it's not necessary, but two, I know it's almost like a quagmire that you have to go through to get through to the other side. And there's a lot, I'm going to guess, to the dentists, the notoriously had a reputation for the highest suicide rates, and every entrepreneur in the right mind is going out of the right mind right now. So what kind of aspects do you think attribute to that?
Well, there's a long, long history. Like, the business press has been talking about an epidemic of suicide and depression amongst founders and entrepreneurs since at least 2018. So there's a lot of anecdotal information there with folks reporting their stories. And we see more and more people sharing on platforms like LinkedIn, for example, about their mental health journeys. The isolation is the number one factor, I would say. That's what people bring up that's what, in fact, in my experience, motivates people to approach me, is that they have the sense there's no one who gets what they're going through. And other entrepreneurs will get what entrepreneurs are going through, but the nature of our isolation is such that it's hard to find others. There aren't entrepreneurs on every street corner. And also, if your nose is in your business, you might be surrounded by entrepreneurs, but you haven't got the time or the energy to socialize to go find those folks. So you're finding yourself in a box on your own, carrying everything. And that's enormously stressful. Things don't even have to be going poorly for that to be a very extreme demand on your nervous system. And that has a result on your mood and mental health, of course.
Absolutely, it does. So I think right now it's kind of important to still discuss the elements of it, because an entrepreneur's day, you mentioned they don't have time to socialize with other entrepreneurs, and especially if they're putting in the 12, sometimes 16-hour days, and then they just want to go home and spend time with their family and kids, and and they're just like, I just don't want to do anything. I don't want to go anywhere. I just want to sit and watch my kids run around like banshees, and and then I'm done.
Yeah.
So is there a way that they can start to kind of re-energize or reinvigorate themselves, or at least just, throw on a pair of pants and get out the door to go to a networking? Or what are some of the ways that they can kind of revamp their mental basket of goodies?
Yeah. Well, what I would propose is actually a whole strategy that starts with becoming familiar with what I call your lead and lag indicators for your mental and emotional well-being. So lead indicators include circumstances outside your control, like global pandemic and economic volatility, for example, external conditions, and being familiar with the external conditions at play and how they impact you. So this requires a little bit of self-reflection and a little bit of an inventory. And then also becoming familiar with things that are within your control. These are the things you do or don't do, and what kind of an impact you have on them. And so once you know what your lead indicators are, then you can start to assess how you're affected by them. Those are your lag indicators. In other words, am I sleeping well? Do I have headaches? What are my stress symptoms? And being able to notice where you are. And that starts that process, which is a process I teach in a 4.5-hour virtual retreat, where folks develop their plans and then implement them and leave with something they can use. But a very simple way to do this is to integrate this kind of self-check-in at your weekly business review. So I'm assuming folks are doing business planning and they're doing a weekly check-in on their business performance, their lead and lag indicators in their business. And so you can take a little 5 minutes to check in on your mental health lead and lag indicators as a part of that larger business planning process. And when you have your fingers on the pulse of your mental and emotional well-being, then you know small, doable things that you can shift. It doesn't even mean, and this is why I say you don't have to blow up your business and run to Bali for 3 months with your new boyfriend or girlfriend, right? You don't have to blow up your life. And in fact, that stuff isn't effective. I'm sure folks have gone on holiday and then come back and felt great on holiday, but then come back to work and just found themselves feeling the same way. It's really about teeny tiny itty bitty little things in the moment, because we have all these stress or threat messages to balance, to find a balance of the stress and threat messages with things you can do to soothe, nourish, and discharge your nervous systems. And again, these are principles that I teach in this retreat. I'll send you some links that folks can refer to understand about these more. But when you're doing this regular kind of check-in with yourself, you can identify these little things that you can do in the course of the day that give you more resources, emotional and physiological, to address what's coming at you so that you're not completely depleted by the end of the day. And I could give a simpler, like, take a yoga class, do deep breathing, sleep better, but I don't believe that those prescriptive tips are as helpful as this small overarching strategy that helps you identify the little things you can do on an hourly basis throughout your day. I think that that's much more powerful than any other one-off tip that I could give folks. And that's why I don't really give those kinds of one-off tips. I think it's more effective to teach about the strategy.
Absolutely. And it really comes down to, well, who are you? What does your day look like? Obviously, somebody that goes from appointment to appointment is going to have a completely different day than somebody that goes from fire to fire to fire. And
Exactly. Well, and even there was research that came out over the pandemic that measured people's nervous system responses when they had intervals between meetings compared to when they had meetings back to back, and the alarm state that was evoked in the body by having back to back Zoom meetings. Like, we think, right? Oh, I don't have to walk down the hall. I don't have to go across town for this meeting. I can just, but no, you need time to gather your thoughts, get up out of your chair, go to the bathroom, take a drink of water, have a snack, eat your lunch, for heaven's sake. Not doing those things really it really depletes your resources, right?
Right. Well, and I kind of laughed because once upon a time when I was doing courses, it was like, okay, just go to the washroom and go and do a little 3-2-1 relax exercise while you're in there. And all the moms with 4-year-olds would go, okay. And then when the 4-year-old's banging on the door, you went, okay, so you're going to have to adjust this for your life.
Yes.
But you got to find some way to do those decompressions. And to your point, I think I just kind of had a little epiphany here is, because we don't have that kind of mental defragmentation time after, we can't defrag the meeting, we go straight into another one.
Yeah.
We're all starting to talk about this thing where we have 28 things in our mind. We're doing something and it's like, okay, I'm doing this thing, but this isn't where I started. What was my intention of getting started? And then we got to backtrack through the things that we've been doing. It's like, oh yeah, right, I got to go and call mom. But I couldn't call mom because I couldn't find my phone. And it just kind of
it becomes
cycles.
a million things.
And
context switching is enormously demanding. It takes a lot of cognitive load. I'm trying to think of the name of the Deep Work, I think it is Cal, what's his name, who wrote about the book Deep Work. I think he talked about context switching in that book, and the toll it takes. You can lose like 20 minutes out of your day trying to reorient yourself to where you were before the interruption or before you did something different, which is why focus periods, sprints of 90-minute focus have been shown to be really, and 90 minutes is not a long time. But even that 90-minute uninterrupted focus, not only does it help you get something done, but it helps your nervous system because you can settle down and what's the word? Settle down, I think is a good, like settle and focus, right? There's a relaxation that occurs in the mind and body when you have that period where there is no other thing I'm supposed to be doing other than what I'm actually doing right now. And this is an example, again, of like the conventional or like, what's it called? Common sense wisdom around what helps your nervous system is less work, more time off, and all that kind of stuff. And there is a role for those things, but focusing for 90 minutes is working, but it's how you do the work, that uninterrupted 90 minutes, that still benefits your nervous system, right?
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people don't realize that in their calendar scheduling systems, they can book off, like I can have this hour, take half an hour, this hour, take half an hour.
This is
as an entrepreneur. Yep.
I'm going to interrupt because this is so important.
Mm-hmm.
We think we can't. We have a belief. This is where the mindset work comes in. We have a belief that we must always be working. Hustle, I call this hustle culture, also known as systems of oppression, where we live in a culture where our worth is dependent on our productivity. And also we have fears around our business survival that lead us to be in this alarm mode, this I have to do something. It's the fight response in the body. And we don't pause and look at, well, wait a minute, is this sense of urgency that tells me I can't take that time really true in this moment? And there are times where, yes, it will be appropriate, and other times where no. But when we get caught in the trance of hustle culture, we don't stop to realize that we're operating in assumptions that actually don't apply to our personal circumstances. And that's where that dilemma that you just mentioned about how we think we actually can put that time in our calendar. But if the concept has never occurred to us that we don't have to hustle, the possibility of putting that time in our calendar doesn't exist.
Absolutely. So once upon a time, I used to teach that the rules of success as a employee are 100% different than they are as a entrepreneur. And it's not just that they're slightly different. We have to learn the rules. It's that they're almost parallel opposites. So what, I have to be there when the boss says to be there. I almost can't be there when people tell me to be there to run a successful business, because then they don't perceive me as professional. I'm not having an equal status to them. There's a whole lot of psychological input that comes into play, and people are so stressed by the idea of living under 100% different rules, obviously, because, our brains are wired to, if I just do the same thing I've always done, I'll survive.
Mm-hmm.
So talk to me about that, because I think especially new entrepreneurs are totally baffled by what has to happen in their business that's so different than how they became very successful in the employee world.
Well, it's a shift. I like what I wish I had a better mind for details, but there's a book called The E-Myth, and Michael somebody, I'll send the information afterwards. Gerber, thank you. He says most small business owners are technicians having an entrepreneurial seizure. So we're really, really good at our craft, and we don't know, and we think, oh, well, I don't need a boss for this. I can do this work on my own. And it's true, you can do the work on your own. But what you don't have are the skills and the knowledge to run a business. And so if you start in entrepreneurship, there are many, many ways that you can access, without the big bucks, information about what it takes to run a business and to make. I remember when this happened for me, I was thinking about running a business, but I wasn't thinking about myself as the person running a business. And it was like a hot air balloon. I kind of, or an elevator, I just kind of went and rose up a level. and had a different perspective because I was looking at the strategic, visionary aspect, the pattern identification aspect of what it is to run a business, to have a long range plan rather than, like, as employees, our work is fed to us more or less. It is predetermined externally. Even when we're leaders within a corporation, we don't have a lot of scope for creativity and imagination and determining the future, the visionary, the strategic aspect of what we're doing. Whereas when you leap out of employment and into running your own business, the first, I think, and very powerful leap you need to make is from a worker to a CEO, whatever that means for you, to being the strategic and visionary person running your business. And there are really, really inexpensive ways that you can access community. And I would say community support is with other entrepreneurs who are thinking about their businesses in this way, hanging out in a mastermind or a low-cost group like that with a facilitator. And they can run you less than $500 a month. And there are some that are really good that are available for $100 and $200 a month. And just starting to immerse yourself in that community and that way of thinking reframes things for you so that you are not lost in the minutia of the day to day, but see yourself differently and begin to have that wider view. That's what I would say, because we have a propensity as former employees to reproduce what we knew at work. And reproduce, I mean, the very things we left work for, like working 24/7, 365, and oppressing ourselves around our productivity and feeling like we have to be always, like at work, we had to be fully present from 9 to 5, no breaks. Well, but work now, there is no boundary around work, which means you have to be fully present, you believe, right, through your work day, which never stops. So making this shift is really the very first most important step, I would say.
I love it. So talk to me about what it looks like to work with you. What kind of issues are people bringing to you? How aware of those issues are they? What's going on when they come to you?
Honestly, most people are stressed. They say, I'm a strong, capable, competent person. But I've hit a wall. What has happened to me? Like, I've handled so much shit in my life. Why the fuck can't I handle the fact that like me this morning, where the bank is giving me a hard time, and like that, there's some minor thing, and they find all of a sudden that they've lost all capacity, and they come blaming themselves, shitting on themselves for this, and not understanding what the issue is. And so the really first thing is unpacking what actually is going on and putting things in their proper perspective, which is to say outside of you. Because as an entrepreneur, these kinds of challenges are inherent in the work, and the work is difficult. And it's not a question of if you will be affected by them, but when and to what degree. And when people understand that, then I find 50% of their distress is alleviated. And when your distress is alleviated as a visionary person, as a strategic person, then you regain your capacity for problem solving and creativity and all the kind of executive functioning skills that you need to run a business. And so that's often the first layer of work that we do, is unpacking that it's not your fault and that there's absolutely nothing wrong with you. And in many cases, what will often happen is that folks on a regular basis forget that because of the level of stress they're under. And that kind of like sharing what you're going through with someone who understands and can help you get reoriented, so that you leave the session going, fuck yeah, I can handle this. And I always knew I could, right? That's a significant 50% of the work that happens when folks work with me. It's their power move. It helps them regain their capacity as a CEO and go out again empowered to face whatever shit will hit the fan that day or that week.
I love it. Well, and I so wish that somebody had pointed that out to me early in business, because more often than not, when I get to the point of, I just want to shut down the business, this isn't working, my clients suck, I hate this, that was the moment when the business was kind of growing beyond my context. I just didn't know how to run that kind and size of a business. So it was like
Yeah.
I was in the 11th hour of growth and then I'd stop. And so many, I mean,
Isn't that
Think and
heartbreaking?
Grow Rich and Napoleon Hill talks about this all the time about kind of, you just, it's that next thing. You just got to get
Mm,
past this
mhm,
mental
mhm,
hiccup
mhm,
and then it'll all get easy again. But you
mhm.
need somebody to talk to about it. Yeah.
Well, exactly, because if you are so overwhelmed by stress, you cannot figure out what the next step is. Your brain capacity, because your body, your brain is an energy management organ. Its whole thing is to attribute resources in the body toward whatever is most needed for survival right now. And I mean, survival, yes, we are not rabbits. No, there's not a bear that's going to come and eat us, but our organism will respond like it's a life or death kind of threat. And all the resources are directed towards survival. Well, when all the resources are directed towards survival, you can't think about the long-term stuff. And when you get regulated emotionally, then you can direct your resources back to what you're best at, right? And it's in these pivotal moments where you are that are, of course, emotionally overwhelming. There's nothing wrong with you for being overwhelmed by this. It's what's to be expected. But handling that then puts you in the position to figure out, okay, well, what the fuck is it that I'm supposed to be doing? Do I need a coach? Do I need a CPA? Do I need a fractional marketing person? Like, do I even need a coach? Like, what are my business strategies? You can't answer those questions when all your mental and emotional resources are directed towards survival, right? So this gets you on an even footing so you can figure out what's next.
I love it. So peeps, if you're going through hell in a handbasket, so to speak, or, you know, like, what the hell am I supposed to be doing right now? Or my life sucks. I want to close my business, shut it down. It's actually perfect time. It's a perfect time in your business. You're doing everything right. You just need some help getting through that next little push. Awesome. Love it. Can you give us an example of a Cinderella story of one of your clients? Feel free to change names.
Sure. Yeah. So I've had several consultants with large consulting firms, engineering, construction, those kinds of things, and who were exactly at this growth stage. And they even had teams, and the teams were really supportive. And in order to be able to come to their teams, they needed to be able to get their head on straight. And so I can think of situations where there were major changes that had to be made, where there was a major contract that had to be addressed, or a major client who the contract was terminated. And I mean, these are all survival at the business level. These are survival issues, right? Letting folks go impacts the public perception of your business, but also impacts the business capacity, right? And these are distressing. Letting folks go while the appropriate business decision also can be painful and difficult interpersonally, and can have also ramifications. It'll shake up your team. Also, your team members, your employees can then wonder, like, especially if it's a number of folks who've had to be let go, then they start to worry, well, is it going to be me next? What's happening to the business? Why were these people let go? And then they start to demonstrate that in their behaviors as well, that those kinds of fears and insecurities, right? So unpacking all the consequences on an emotional and mental health level of these significant changes in the business, like I've named, every one of these business owners, after doing that work, have said at the conclusion of the session, they'll say things like, now I know what I need to talk over with my team. Now I know how I need to bring this issue to the contractor whose contract we need to terminate. I know the language I'm going to use, and I know how I'm going to present it. Now I know who I have to let go and how I'm going to language that with them. I also know that I have to approach HR about these things. And I know what my next steps are in this regard, so that I can make these big moves that I need to make. So those are some examples. And what I have found is that it's really in the majority, immediate term, I wouldn't call it transformation, but rather, I hate the word empowerment, but this is literally what happens. People come out knowing what they need to do next. And over the much longer term, what happens is that they are able to accompany themselves more, they have more skills for self-accompaniment, so that they need less and less support when the shit hits the fan, because they have, in the process of our work together, learned skills for managing what's happening with their nervous system, so that instead of sending me a Voxer at 2 a.m. because they're shitting about firing somebody tomorrow, which is one of the things that's absolutely available within the support that I provide. But with skills, you can become self-reliant and self-empowered. And so over the long term, folks are more and more and more capable of ending up in the place that they used to need my support for. And that's the longer term transformation that occurs.
I love it. So I know our listeners are going to want more from you. How do they start their journey with you?
Sure. I would invite folks to sign up to subscribe to my newsletter, shula.ca/newsletter. This is where the kind of things that you and I have talked about, Michelle, I write about these kinds of things at length. And so I share that in my newsletters. And this is really the best place to connect with me. And then my website is shula.ca. And there are tons of free resources there around your mental and emotional well-being. So I invite you to come and find me.
Nice. I love it. So peeps, we will of course have Shula's links in the show notes. So go ahead and scroll down, open up in a new browser, because we're not done yet. So you mentioned when you finished your master's that you knew that you were going to have to start a business. Was it at that point that you knew that you were special kind of crazy enough that you could do it? Or did that happen before then or after then?
Well, I'd always had a side hustle. Like I had in my while I was employed. Well, although I have to say, like, I came into the job market in the 80s. People think the gig economy is now. Newsflash, it's been around for 40 freaking years. Because in the 80s, there were all these big industrial layoffs, and folks were companies had understood the cost of providing benefits to workers. And so they hired only folks on contract. And so going from contract to contract to contract was its own kind of hustle that required me to think about marketing my skills and what was the next thing. And I also had my own small businesses on the side. So I was always thinking about working for myself, but I always thought of myself as a freelancer, never a CEO. And that was the shift that occurred when I came into full-time self-employment later in my life.
Nice. I love that. You've been absolutely awesome. Any last words for our peeps?
I would say, I invite you to consider that what you're going through is not your fault, and that there's nothing wrong with you. The stress that you're experiencing is the natural. As entrepreneurs, we are doing hard work, and we are humans doing hard work. And we are going to be affected by that. It's not a personal flaw. It's an aspect of being human in business. And so when you're stressed out, there's nothing wrong with you.
I love it. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. And I know how valuable it is.
Thanks, Michelle.
Awesome. Peeps, this is Michelle Nedelec, your mistress in business. Thank you for being here with us today. Be sure to subscribe to the show, share it with your friends, so we can help you get it up when you need it, because we love having you here. Thank you for listening to the Little Blue Pill for Business podcast with your mistress in business, Michelle Nedelec. Why are you still here? Go to littlebluepillforbusiness.com and get your goodies. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to share it with somebody else that you know would enjoy getting it up in business after you subscribe to the podcast, of course, so you won't miss any future episodes. Now, check the notes for links. Oh, and only tell your wife if she's into this, entrepreneurship. And I'll see you both on the other side.